Hey everyone, welcome to part 9 of the Lord of Blights Masterclass. So as you can see, I've kind of jumped ahead a little bit and I've assembled the model. So what I did was because we super glued them onto the props, I just gently broke them off each prop, and I held each part with a little bit of tissue paper so we didn't damage any of the paintwork. And then I cleaned off any super glue areas with a sharp blade, and then just assembled it on here. I used a small amount of plastic glue to glue each part on, so I didn't use super glue. The plastic glue will be fine. And then you see we've got them assembled now. The only tricky part with assembly was just the dagger under here, so it just took a little bit of moving into place, so just be careful with that. So I glued the dagger in first, and then I did the gallows, and then did the shield and the hammer. So if you do yours in that order, you'll be fine. So I didn't want to show you my brutal process of taking it all apart and everything, but I've left him on this base for now because we're going to finish balancing out the model with some paint work next, and then we're going to put him on his final base afterwards. So as I mentioned before, I've not painted these skin areas here on the gallows, so we're going to paint those in first and try and fill those gaps a little bit where the two parts meet. Also, when I glued them together, I noticed there was lots of, when you scrape bits and when you take parts off, you end up with little parts on the model. So I just used a clean brush, just brushed over the model just to get any small bits of plastic off and things like that, because we don't want any of that in the way. You want a nice finish, so just use a clean brush just to brush over it as well. So going back to the how to paint the skin episode, so what we need to do now is just to paint these two parts in exactly the same method as what we did before. So I'm just going to basically just go through that entire method and paint these two parts in. So I won't repeat the whole process because you can watch that video, and what I'll do is I'll go and finish these two areas. But what I did want to show you is here you can see the two parts join, so where they've been glued. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep dropping in paint down those areas until it's filled as much as it can be. So I didn't want to use any filler because it's going to destroy our paintwork from there. So I'm hoping if we keep dropping in paint, let it dry, drop in some more paint, let it dry, it will fill that area naturally for us. So I'll do that and show you how that looks before I carry on painting the rest of that process. I'll come back in a second. Okay, so you can see what I've done here. So this is the Bugman's Glow and Screamer Pink mix that we use to base coat the skin with, and I've just allowed it just to go over those the gaps where the two parts met when we glued the gallows in place. So what you do is just, once you base coat it, just allow the paint just to sit in that gap down there, and it'll actually fill it for you if you just keep going over it. And it saves you having to use any filler or anything like that, because it's just such a small gap. The paint will do the work for you if you just keep going over it and having patience, let it dry, go over it, and then you can paint over it smoothly then. So that's what I'm gonna keep doing that. And then the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna paint these two areas of skin using exactly the same process as the skin tutorial. So I'll link that below, and we'll come back once that's done. So if you guys do that as well, that'll be good. Okay, so I've got the skin painted in there now, just that wraps around the gallows there. So you can see that I just dropped in the paint there to fill any of those gaps. So it's done a pretty good job of it. I've just painted it in the same way as the rest of the skin. So it sort of feels integrated with the model now a little bit better. So now that like I said, we've glued the model together, we can start balancing out things a little bit more and making it feel a bit better. So one of the areas which I looked at was just down here where the arm meets the vambrace piece here, where it's newly glued on. Feels like it needs a bit of shading down there. Obviously we couldn't do that at the time because it was a separate piece, so we can shade that a little bit more now. So I've got the Screamer Pink and Cantor Blue mix, so I've just made that into like a glaze consistency. I'm just going to wash that down into that gap there, just to add some natural shade. It should be shaded down there. So do it, let it dry, and then do it again. So it felt a bit separate after I glued it on. As that's drying, I think there's a few other areas which you could do with a bit more shading as well. So like right down there in that gap, it feels like we could go a bit darker. So I'll just drop a bit more of that shade in there. So I think my main aim is just to really shade this bit down here. I'll keep going over that. I think the back area was okay. I'm just going to go and pick out a few areas where you could do with a bit more depth, just using that shade colour. And yours might be a little bit different to this, obviously. Just go around the model and just double check you've not missed any places where it could be a bit deeper. I'm just going to keep going over this. And we can add a touch of black to that mix as well if we want, just to make it a little bit deeper, like in the very deepest recesses. So just down here between the arm and the belly, I think we can get a deeper shade in there. A bit more contrast just right down there. And using that darkest shade, you can go around and see if there's any other areas that could do with being a bit darker. Remember, contrast is like the most important thing here. So those very deepest folds in the skin. This kind of area, so you can just get a little bit more if you wanted. So this last stage, like balancing out all the colours on the model, now that it's all together, quite important. Just allows you to get that last little bit done. Maybe just a bit onto that. Just take your time with it. Use your judgment. Maybe a bit down there between his arm. So this is the Swimmer Pink, Cantor Blue and a bit of black mix. We're just going in with the darkest areas. Okay, so I've done a little bit more shading just here and there. I mean, it's not a massive amount, just a little bit where I wanted it. So we've done some shading. So we're going to go and just take some white now and thin that down quite heavily. And then we're going to go back onto the skin and basically just go over some areas where I feel like it could do with a bit more highlighting here and there. This is going to be pretty much an all over sort of treatment where I think could do with just lightening up, because we did the skin quite early. As you paint the rest of the model, the skin will appear a bit darker as you add more colours to the model. That's always the case when you do the skin early in the painting process. So I'm just going to go over the model, just picking out some areas where I think it could do with more highlights, just over all of the skin area really. So keeping it thin, I'll just glaze it first and then go and pick up any areas where it needs a bit more of a sharper highlight, maybe on some edges here and there. But yeah, we're just going to be going very thinly, just building it up where it's needed. Just adding that contrast again. Just where I want to. So this will take a little bit of time, I think, so I'm just going to get on with this and show you how it looks once it's done. But yeah, I'm just going to pretty much just go give the skin another highlight of white, just where it's needed. Okay, so I've glazed a few more highlights onto that skin now, so got a bit more contrast on it, and I'm a bit happier with the balance of the skin tone. It wasn't a lot more, it's just a little bit here and there. So I'm going to take some Creed khaki and go back onto the armour now. So I'm going to thin that down. I'm pretty much going to do the same thing what we just did with the skin. So I'm just going to touch on a few highlights where I feel it needs it, balance out the armour a bit more. Maybe a few got knocked off over the course of painting the model as well. So just, this is a light, very light colour, so this is our highlight colour from the armour stage. So just thinning that down and just going on, just giving the armour that treatment, just where it really needs extra highlight. It's sort of missing. So I'm going to go around and just have a look at the armour. But whilst we're on this stage as well, so remember we talked about bringing the attention on the face as much as we can. And this is our battle that we've always had with this model. So I'm just going to go around the eye again and just strengthen that highlight that we put on the eye with the Kree-Khaki. Just make that a little bit stronger. So it's quite a bit lighter than what it was. And I'll go around all the green and just place on the odd highlight where I feel it's missing. We'll come back in a minute. Okay, so I've just sharpened up the highlight on the armour there. I was thinking about maybe doing a glaze around the eye on the helmet just to pop the attention on the head a bit more, but I'm really in two minds about it, so I think I'm going to play it safe and I'm just going to get a bit of Screaming Skull. I'm just going to add just around the eye area, just add a very fine highlight. Just a couple of little spots of Screaming Skull. Just really try and get the attention on that head. It's only a small amount. Just a little bit more, just to pop it out, because I quite like how it looks. So, okay. I think also at this stage, if there's any areas of the metals that you've rubbed off any of the last highlight, because that's easily done with metallics, just get a little bit of Stormhose Silver and just neaten those up as well. Just have a last look. Metallics tend to be quite easily sort of worn away as you're handling the model. So just have a check over those areas. Okay, so I think I'm pretty much done with just balancing out the model now. It's basically just re-establishing a few highlights and just tweaking a little bit of contrast here and there. I don't really want to go messing around with it too much more. I think I'm pretty happy with how it looks. I don't think it needed many more glazes or anything. So we've got the main contrast going on is the warm skin tone there with the purple in it against the cool green. But we've got warm tones in the shading of the green, which is tying it in with the skin. And then the same with the armour, the metal armour. So that's a warm coppery tone, but it's got cool green within it as well, so it's pulling it all in to the model. So the model feels, it feels in harmony with itself as well, even with the wood, which is like a cool tone of wood, so it doesn't draw too much attention to it. It's got green tones in there as well, which we added as well. So it's all sort of like, feels like it says one rather than like the green being separate to the skin or anything like that. So it's sort of like it feels unnatural. So I think, yeah, I'm pretty happy with all of that. So that's episode 9 done. So I think the next one we're going to be doing a base for him. So I think I'm going to keep the base relatively simple, nothing too extravagant. And then it's up to you guys what you do with the base as well. But we'll do that one next. So that'll be the last episode. So that's episode 10. So if you guys get the model ready for the base, and then we'll see you in the next one. Cheers, guys. Bye.